Hello everyone and welcome to my class. To continue with the second theme of class 12th history, that is kings, farmers and towns. In this chapter we are covering circa 600 BC to circa 600 CE, a very important time period in Indian history. We have discussed already these things, the importance of this time frame in Indian history in my previous videos. Right now in this video I'll be talking about how important was the empire, and we'll talk about the kingdoms that emerged during these centuries in different parts of Indian subcontinent. So let's start the topic. How important was the empire? See, when we talk about an empire, India was the part of British Empire, and the discovery of Mauryas were done under the Britishers, when India was under Britishers. The initiative was taken by the Britishers themselves. Right, they were the ones. Remember, I have explained you about the James Prinsep, who deciphered the Brahmi and Kharoshti script, and then the discovery of the Mauryan Empire came into limelight. Right, so such discoveries, the such initiation was taken by the Britishers to rediscovered India's past, and they have done it with excitement. They have done it with their keen interest in the history and archaeology. Right, they were using that their technical knowledge in discovering the past of India. Moreover, on other side, the Indian leaders, they used these discoveries for the nation. Right, they projected King Ashok as the inspiring figure for the Indians, so that they can instill the idea in among the people about the glorious Indian past, that yes, we do have such rulers who ruled the entire Indian subcontinent. So such things were projected by the Indian national leaders, so that they can instill the idea of nationalism among the people. Now, talking about the new notion of kingship, this was the time period. In these centuries we see chiefs and chiefdoms, like apart from the main kingdoms, many chiefs became important. Right, now when we talk about chiefs and on other side kings, there are differences among the two. Right, when the chiefs are basically the strong powerful person within one territory, who is leading the people living in that particular territory. Let's take an example. In a tribe, in any tribe, there is one leader who lead the tribe, who takes the decision of the tribe. The same was the case with the chiefs, but chiefs, they basically get support from their king's folk, means the people living within that territory, they give support to the chiefs. The chief position is not hereditary like the rulers, like the kings. In case of kings, if a king is ruling, after his death his son will going to rule. After that his death, the crown will pass on from one generation to another generation of the person belonging to same dynasty. But in case of chiefs, the chief position was not hereditary. Whosoever is the strongest will going to lead the other people in within one territory. So such was the case with the chiefs. Now these chiefs were not having standing army like the rulers, like the kings. Kings do have a strong army, but in case of chiefs they don't have army. In case of any attack on the territory, what they used to do, every person within that particular territory becomes soldiers. So they face the situation together. Right, but they don't have permanent armies. Right, so this was also seen, this chiefs were emerged during these centuries. Now, chiefs in the south, chiefs and kings in the south, three important dynasties emerged during these centuries. One was Chola, Chera, Pandya. I'll tell you their location, where exactly. Modern day Kerala part was under Cheras. Now, the northern region of Tamil Nadu was under Cholas. Tamiligam is an ancient name of Tamil Nadu. Now this extreme southern part was under Pandyas. Now these three dynasties emerged here, and they ruled for a comparatively longer period in South India, right? And very strong kingdoms. And we get information about these kingdoms from Sangam text or Sangam literature. Now talking about Sangam literature, we'll be discussing Sangam literature in detail in upcoming chapters, but here I'll give you a brief idea about Sangam. Sangam was the assembly of poets and bards organized by the Pandya rulers. The rulers used to invite the poets from different parts of India, and these poets used to present their composition in front of the ruler in the royal court. And the ruler used to appoint a few people who their duty was to note down the composition, whatever the composition the poets used to present with their names. So this helped in composing three huge voluminous books called Sangams, right? The first two books, Sangam volumes, were lost, but I think the third one is present in fragments form. Means different parts of the third Sangam is available. Now, then we talk. This is all about the Chola, Chera, Pandya. These three kingdoms, we get information from Sangam literature or Sangam text. Then another important kingdom that emerged very powerful is the Satvahana. Satvahana, they were here in the western part, right? And Shakas were the Central Asian tribe people. They came from Central Asia, and they settled in the northwestern region of India and western region of India. Means this region they were controlling, established their kingdom here in northwestern region, right? Now these are some of the important kingdoms that emerged. Then around first century CE first century BC and first century CE, we find an important kingdom here in extreme north, that in the Kashmir region, present day Kashmir region. We find Kushanas ruling there, right? Kushana was a Central Asian tribe who came from here from Central Asia. They settled in the extreme northwestern region and the Kashmir part here in India, right? And they were the ones who used the theory of divine kings to establish their authority over the people, to make them understand that yes, they were the legitimate rulers of theirs. What they have done, they started associating themselves with the gods, with deities, right? With certain deities, and to show their authority, to show their power, to establish this notion of divine kingship. What they used to do, they used to build a huge statues of theirs, and their statues were installed in different regions of their kingdom, right? Such statues are found in Afghanistan region, and in Mathura also, in a shrine at Math, such statue of Kushana ruler is found, right? They also adopted title like Devputra, son of God, to to make their people believe in the theory of divine kingship, right? Then talking about the Gupta's empire is a very huge empire established in India, very strong rulers. Now Guptas, when they were ruling, there were other small kingdoms that also emerged in Indian soil, but these kingdoms and the Guptas were dependent largely on the Samantas. Now who were Samantas? What happened? The Guptas rulers, they don't pay their ministers in cash. So instead of giving them salary, what they used to do, they used to give them land grants. Suppose they have given one village to one minister. Now this village is yours. Now minister or that Samant was the owner of that land. Whosoever living in that land provides revenue to the Samanta. A part of that revenue is taken by the state, is given to the king, and rest part is kept with Samanta. So in that money, in that revenue, the Samanta was expected to maintain fixed number of soldiers, right? And these soldiers, whenever the king requires, then the Samantas were used to provide these soldiers to the king. So the responsibility on Samanta was to build, collect the tax, to maintain their granted land, and to provide soldiers whenever the king requires. Now, this system was somewhat similar to the feudal system of medieval Europe, right? But here the importance is that these Gupta rulers, they used to, whenever they used to give land grants, not only to ministers, but they used to give it to Brahmins also, to ordinary people. Whatever the land grants they used to give, they used to inscribe them, the details of the land grants on copper plates. Such copper plates are found on large number, describing the details of the land grants, how much land is given to whom, by which ruler. Such details are there in the copper plate inscriptions. Then information about the Guptas we get from inscriptions, from the coins that they used. Then the Prashastis. Now the Prashastis are long poems written in praise of the ruler, right? The rulers used to appoint royal poets. They used to praise the ruler. They used to highlight the qualities and the achievements of the ruler, and they do this thing just for the sake of gifts that they receive from the ruler. So one such a good example is of Prayag Prashasti or Allahabad pillar inscription. It was written by Hari Sena, and it was written for the King Samudragupta, right? And there is an excerpt given in the book. A portion of Prayag Prashasti is given, which shows that in how exaggerated manner the Hari Sena praised Samudragupta. Please read that. So this is all about the small kingdoms and that emerged during these centuries in Indian subcontinent. Please like, share and review, and subscribe my channel. Thank you.